The spark of defiance. Commander Ryan Taylor's boots echoed against the obsidian floor of the Imperial Court, each step a deliberate challenge to the suffocating silence that permeated the chamber. Behind him lay the still-twitching body of Admiral Zindax, the Emperor's most trusted enforcer, whose final moments had been spent demanding Earth's immediate surrender. The smoking pulse pistol in Taylor's hand told a different story. Emperor Sirius rose from his crystalline throne, his scaled form rippling with barely contained fury. The assembled Zindi nobles drew back, their synchronized movement creating a whisper of silk and scales against marble. None dared to intervene, not after witnessing the swift dispatch of their greatest military commander. Earth will never submit to your decrees, Taylor declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We refuse to pay a single credit in tribute to your corrupt empire. The Emperor's talons scraped against his throne's armrests. You dare. Your Majesty, Taylor cut him off, earning gasps from the courtiers, you have no idea what humanity dares to do. His contemptuous gaze swept across the assembled Zindi nobles. We dare to defy you, to challenge your unjust rule, to build alliances with all free species. Mock our human arrogance at your peril. As Taylor strode out, not a single guard moved to stop him. The Emperor's golden eyes followed his exit, already calculating the price humanity would pay for this insult. But mankind had a weapon the galaxy had never seen before, not ships or guns or bombs, but an unbreakable will, an indomitable spirit that would never bend the knee. In the heart of the palace, a different sort of council convened. Prince Zohar paced the marble floor, his talons clicking with each agitated step. We must crush the humans swiftly and decisively, he growled. Make an example of them before other client species get rebellious ideas. Princess Va lounged on a divan, studying her ornate claw sheaths. Why waste ships and soldiers when we can bring them to heel through more elegant means? Let me lead a diplomatic mission to Earth. I'll have their leaders groveling before the throne without a drop of blood spilled. The Emperor rumbled his assent. You have one cycle, daughter. Bend the humans to our will, or the task falls to your brother. Va inclined her head, emerald eyes glinting with calculation. Light years away, Ambassador Lena Sorensen reviewed intelligence reports in her secure office at Earth's Diplomatic Corps headquarters. The Zindi response had been predictable, they always tried honey before vinegar with new conquests. Summon the Security Council, she instructed her aide, and get me President Xiang on a secure channel. We have work to do. As Earth's leadership prepared for the diplomatic dance to come, Commander Taylor oversaw a surge of activity at the orbital space docks. Newly minted warships underwent final outfitting, welding sparks glowing against the starry backdrop while crewmen hustled to and fro. He nodded in approval at the orderly commotion. The diplomatic corps would wage their battles around conference tables and in media headlines, his warriors were forging a different arsenal. On the bluffs overlooking the space docks, journalist Ethan Riley raised his camera to frame a gleaming cruiser, its fresh-painted hull resplendent in blues and golds. There she is, he murmured to his Hola recorder. The UES Horatius. Isn't she a beauty? You and me are going to be spending some quality time together, girl, getting the real story. And in 1,000 shadowed halls on 100 worlds, rebel leaders and resistance fighters gathered around concealed holoprojectors, reading the first tremors of hope in encrypted data streams. The fight of their lives was coming. At long last, a spark had been struck to illuminate the galactic night. Words rippled across the hollow screens, phrases that would echo down the ages: Earth defies empire. Humanity will not kneel. The reckoning begins. In the weeks that followed, Princess Va's diplomatic mission arrived on Earth with all the pomp and circumstance befitting an imperial envoy. Her emerald-scaled retinue took up residence in a specially prepared compound in Geneva, while news networks buzzed with speculation about the upcoming negotiations. Ambassador Sorensen led the Earth delegation in the preliminary talks, a careful dance of words and implications. Each courtesy exchanged was a move in a greater game, each concession offered a carefully crafted trap. Surely, Va purred during one session, her translator rendering her sibilant speech into smooth standard English. Earth recognizes the benefits of imperial protection. The galaxy is a dangerous place for isolated worlds. We appreciate your concern, Your Highness, Sorensen replied with a diplomatic smile. Though I note that the greatest danger to isolated worlds seems to come from expansionist empires. The barb was subtle, but Va's scales rippled with suppressed anger. She recovered quickly, her own smile never wavering. The Empire brings order, Ambassador. Structure. Progress. Ask the Corellians how their economy has flourished under imperial guidance. Interesting you should mention the Corellians, Sorensen responded, activating a holoscreen. We've been reviewing the terms of their voluntary submission to imperial rule. Would you care to explain these resource quotas? These security contributions? The negotiations continued in this vein, each side probing for weaknesses while gathering intelligence on the other. But beneath the diplomatic veneer, both Earth and the Empire prepared for the inevitable clash to come. Commander Taylor used the breathing room provided by the talks to accelerate Earth's military preparations. The orbital shipyards worked around the clock, churning out vessels that incorporated decades of borrowed, stolen, and reverse-engineered alien technology. But humanity's greatest innovations came from their own minds, weapons and defenses born of terrestrial ingenuity and humanity's unique way of thinking outside established paradigms. They expect us to fight like they do, Taylor explained to his assembled officers aboard the Horatius. To follow the same tactical doctrines that haven't changed in 10,000 years of imperial fleet warfare. That's our advantage, we'll fight like humans. Meanwhile, Ethan Riley dug deeper into the Empire's dark secrets. His investigation led him through the shadowy underworld of a dozen worlds, following leads provided by dissident Xindi nobles and oppressed alien species. The story he was piecing together would shake the foundations of imperial power, if he lived long enough to publish it. One night, as he sifted through encrypted data in his safe house, Riley's security systems pinged a warning. Imperial agents had found him. He grabbed his backup drives and fled into the neon-lit streets of New Shanghai, pulse blasts sizzling the air around him. But the close call had yielded something valuable, confirmation that he was on the right track. As the cycle of negotiation that Princess Va had been granted drew to a close, tensions ratcheted higher. The imperial delegation's demands remained unchanged. Earth would submit to imperial authority, pay tribute in resources and technology, and accept a permanent Xindi military presence in the Sol system. In return, they would be granted the privilege of becoming an imperial protectorate. Earth's response was equally consistent, no. In the final session, Va's diplomatic mask finally cracked. You don't understand what you're refusing, she hissed. The Empire has broken 1,000 worlds more powerful than yours. Your defiance will only bring suffering. Ambassador Sorensen met the princess's gaze steadily. No, Your Highness. You don't understand what you're threatening. Humanity has fought itself for millennia. We've nearly destroyed ourselves more times than I can count. But we've always survived, always rebuilt, always emerged stronger. And now, for the first time in our history, we are truly united. Against you. She stood, gathering her documents. The Empire demands tribute. Here is humanity's tribute, a warning. Leave us in peace, or learn why our own history calls us the gods of war. As Va's diplomatic mission departed Earth empty-handed, the galaxy held its breath. The Empire had never tolerated such defiance. Their response would be swift and terrible. But as Commander Taylor watched the Imperial ships vanish into hyperspace, he felt only grim satisfaction. The die was cast. Humanity had chosen its path. And whether in victory or defeat, they would show the galaxy why Earth's nations had named their warships after ancient heroes and poets, warriors and philosophers. They would demonstrate why humans painted their vessels in proud colors rather than practical camouflage, why they still trained their crews to fight with bullets and blades alongside energy weapons and drone swarms. The Empire thought they were facing another upstart species to be crushed into submission. Instead, they were about to learn why humanity's own legends cast them as both the divine and the damned, creators and destroyers, beings of reason and passion capable of both transcendent beauty and terrifying violence. The real war was about to begin. Shadows of war. The failed assassination of Prime Minister Garcia sent shockwaves rippling across Earth and beyond. In the halls of power, military command centers, and civilian spaceports alike, only one question burned on every tongue: how would humanity strike back against this blatant imperial aggression? Commander Ryan Taylor slammed his fist on the briefing room table, knuckles white with tension. This insult cannot stand. His eyes flashed to Ambassador Sorensen. We need to hit them back hard, right at the heart of their power. Sorensen nodded, an icy calm settling over her features. I concur, and I believe I know how. She tapped a series of commands into the holodisplay, bringing up a ghostly wireframe of an ornate palace complex. Xindi's Prime, the Imperial Capital World. We infiltrate, penetrate their data vaults, and extract intelligence to blow the lid off their tyrannical regime. Taylor's wolfish grin reflected the hologram's blue light. I like it. Risky as hell, but that's never stopped us before. He crossed his arms, studying the image. I'll assemble a team. Small and fast, in and out before they even know what stung them. As Taylor and Sorensen laid their audacious plans, Ethan Riley prowled the shadows of Earth's global data nets, chasing whispers of the impending operation. The journalist's neural implants pulsed with a flood of incoming chatter from his web of underworld contacts. A time, a place, a list of names. Riley's eyes widened. This was big. Bigger than big. His fingers flew over his battered keyboard, coalescing whispers into a cohesive story that could shake the foundations of galactic order. But he wasn't the only one sniffing out this trail. Imperial data hounds picked up the scent, black-clad agents converging on Riley's hideout. He barely escaped the ambush, the acrid stench of fused polymers and charged circuitry still scorching his nostrils as he fled into the neon-lit night. In the luxuriant solitude of her private chambers on the elderly homeworld, Princess Zara analyzed Riley's intercepted reports with a critical eye. These humans, such fire, such unbreakable defiance in the face of imperial dominion. Perhaps at long last, her people had found a species that could light the spark of revolution. Zara's elegant fingers danced across the holocom panel, encoding a message into a scrambled subspace carrier wave. Ambassador Sorensen, I have information that may aid your noble cause. On Xindi's Prime, the newly arrived human infiltration team fanned out into the pulsing crowds of the imperial capital. Their genetically sculpted features blended seamlessly with the myriad xeno races thronging the streets. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura, the team's cyber warfare prodigy, marveled at the sheer alienness pressing in from all sides. He'd never felt more human than in this moment, surrounded by 10,000 varieties of slitted eyes and scaly hides. Shaking off his momentary daze, Nakamura focused on the mission. His team slipped through the outer perimeter of Imperial security like ghosts, false credentials and hacked surveillance feeds paving their path into the Great Palace. They crept through a den of opulence and decadence that set Nakamura's stomach churning. With preternatural skill, the lieutenant wove his way into the Imperial data vaults, splicing his cranial uplink into the pulsing arteries of corrupted information. Misappropriated funds, massacred rebellions, orgies of vice and cruelty at the highest imperial echelons, a deluge of shameful secrets poured into Nakamura's memory banks. Enough to shatter the Empire's grip on 1,000 worlds, if they could only escape with this precious cash. But as the exfiltration alarm pulsed, disaster struck. A muffled scream, a spray of blood in the darkness, and suddenly Imperial guardsmen boiled into the vault antechamber, plasma rifles spitting lethally accurate blasts. Nakamura's team died messily, ruptured bodies strewn across the polished obsidian floor. Only Nakamura escaped the carnage, a stolen Imperial uniform his camouflage, his bleeding bodyguard the unwitting key to his infiltration of the guardsmen's ranks. Out into the teeming streets he staggered, alone and hunted in this alien nightmare. The lieutenant tapped his subdermal comm implant with a shaking finger, his voice a hoarse rasp over the quantum encryption channel. X-ray actual, this is Ronan. Team is down, I repeat, team is down. Package is secured. Requesting emergency extraction. It's all on me now. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Taylor's fingers tightened around the comm station railing as Nakamura's status report filtered through bursts of static. The Empire would be out for blood now. Their response would be swift and brutal. The commander turned to his executive officer, expression grim. Fleet-wide broadcast, all channels. He drew in a steadying breath. This is Commander Ryan Taylor to all Earth Defense Force units. Action stations, I repeat, action stations. We are now at war. The galactic infosphere erupted with chaos as Ethan Riley's exposé hit the networks. Intercepted communiques scrolled across billions of screens, Emperor Sirius's seal glowing accusingly at the bottom of each damning decree. In the UES Horatius war room, Commander Taylor watched the fallout spread across real-time holomaps. Look at that, he murmured, gesturing to clusters of red indicators flaring to life. The Eldari Protectorate, Corran hegemony, they're all lighting up with civil unrest. Ambassador Sorensen's eyes narrowed as she studied the shifting patterns. We've cracked their facade. Now we push. On Xindi's prime, Emperor Sirius raged, hurling a priceless artifact across his private chambers. Lies. Human fabrications, he snarled. Prince Zoar's scales rippled uneasily. Father, our own records confirm. Silence. The Emperor's tail lashed, toppling an ornate vase. Mobilize the fleet. We'll crush these upstarts and make an example of their worlds. Admiral Kaz's voice crackled over the comm, Your Majesty, my armada stands ready. We await only your word to begin the assault on human colonies. Back on Earth, the Security Council chamber thrummed with urgent debate. Defense Minister Chen hit his fist on the table. We must strike first. Hit them before they can mass their full strength against us. Sorensen's cool voice cut through the rising clamor. And trigger a war that will devastate half the galaxy. No, there's another way. She tapped her datapad, bringing up a star chart. I've been in contact with representatives from multiple Imperial vassal worlds. If we can bring them to the table. President Xiang leaned forward, intrigued. Go on, Ambassador. Hours later, encrypted messages flashed across subspace. The Corvan hegemon, elder councils of the Eldari, even some mid-level Xindi bureaucrats, all received carefully worded invitations. On a nondescript world in neutral space, ships began to arrive. Sorensen stood at the spaceport, flanked by a mixed delegation of humans and allied Xenos. A sleek Xindi cruiser settled onto the landing pad, disgorging a cluster of scaled forms. Among them, Princess Zara moved with fluid grace, her emerald eyes meeting Sorensen's with shared purpose. The real game was about to begin, not just a war of ships and soldiers, but a struggle for the very soul of galactic civilization. And humanity, the upstart species that dared to defy an empire, would light the way. Alliances and betrayals. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura's escape from Xindi's prime became instant legend. With Imperial forces closing in, he'd hijacked a civilian transport, bluffed his way through 3 security checkpoints, and transmitted the stolen data cache to waiting Earth vessels before his pursuers could lock down orbital communications. Now, safely aboard the UES Horatius, he watched the classified intelligence spread like wildfire through diplomatic channels. The revelation of Imperial atrocities shocked even hardened veterans of galactic politics. Footage of ecological devastation on resource worlds, records of genocide against resistant species, proof of systematic corruption that enriched noble houses while impoverishing entire sectors, the evidence was damning and irrefutable. We've got them, Ambassador Sorensen declared during an emergency session of the Coalition Council. Representatives from 24 former imperial vassal states filled the chamber, their varied forms united in purpose. But we need to move quickly, before the Empire can marshal its full military might. Princess Zara, newly declared leader of the Elderly Liberation Front, rose from her seat. The Elderly fleet stands ready. We've been preparing for this moment for generations. Her crystalline features caught the light as she turned to address the assembly. But make no mistake, this war will be unlike anything the galaxy has seen. The Empire's grip on power spans 50,000 years. They won't relinquish it easily. Commander Taylor stepped forward, activating a holographic tactical display. That's why we're not fighting a conventional war. Earth's strategic analysis suggests the Empire's greatest vulnerability isn't military, it's economic. Their entire system relies on resource extraction from subjugated worlds. We cut off that supply chain, their war machine grinds to a halt. The plan was audacious. While the combined coalition fleet engaged Imperial forces in carefully chosen battlegrounds, special operations teams would strike at key infrastructure throughout Imperial space. Refineries, shipyards, transport hubs, anything that kept the Empire's war machine running. But first, they needed to survive the Empire's immediate retaliation. The Imperial First Fleet struck at Earth's outer colonies without warning. Plasma bombardment reduced settlement domes on Europa to slag. Mining operations on Titan vanished in atomic fire. But the defenders were ready. Execute Operation Thunderbolt, Taylor ordered from the Horatius's command deck. Across the solar system, automated defense platforms dropped their stealth fields. Missile swarms and energy weapons caught the Imperial ships in devastating crossfire. Admiral Kaz watched in horror as a third of his fleet died in the opening minutes of battle. Impossible, he snarled. Their technology is primitive. They can't. A hypervelocity round from Earth's lunar mass driver punched through his flagship's shields, ending the Admiral's protests permanently. The Battle of Seoul became a turning point in galactic history, the first time an Imperial fleet had been decisively defeated in over 10,000 years. But it was only the beginning. Ethan Riley's journalism took on new urgency as he documented the rebellion's spread. On 1,000 worlds, oppressed populations rose up against their imperial overlords. The Empire's response was predictably brutal, but each atrocity only fueled further resistance. They don't understand what they've unleashed, Riley wrote in an encrypted dispatch from the front lines. Every world they burn, every population they massacre, only proves humanity's warnings were right. The Empire must fall. But even as the rebellion gained momentum, dark forces gathered in the shadows. Not every imperial vassal state welcomed the prospect of change. Some had grown fat on imperial patronage, their ruling classes deeply invested in maintaining the status quo. On Centauri Prime, humanity's closest stellar neighbor, Governor Voss saw opportunity in chaos. His private militia had been stockpiling weapons for years, preparing for just such a moment. When Earth forces were drawn away to defend against Imperial attacks, he struck. The Centauri betrayal caught Earth's leadership by surprise. Voss's forces, armed with secretly acquired Imperial weapons, seized control of vital shipping lanes and communication relays. Worse, his intelligence agents had infiltrated key positions throughout the Earth Defense Force. "We've got ships going dark all along the Centauri corridor," reported Commander Taylor's XO. "Crews not responding to authentication challenges. They're using our own recognition codes against us." Taylor's expression hardened. "Implement zero-trust protocols. Any vessel that can't provide live biometric verification is to be treated as hostile." He turned to his tactical officer. "And get me a firing solution on Governor Voss's palace. Let's see how brave he feels when the missiles are pointed at him." But Voss had prepared for this contingency. "Behold the price of defiance," his holographic image sneered as footage began streaming across all channels. Dozens of civilian habitat rings orbited Centauri Prime, each home to millions. One by one, they began to detonate. "Monster," Sorensen whispered as she watched the death toll mount. Earth's forces could only watch helplessly as Voss demonstrated his willingness to sacrifice innocent lives to achieve his aims. The war entered a darker phase. No longer a straightforward rebellion against imperial rule, it became a complex web of shifting alliances and betrayals. Species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia found themselves on opposite sides of an ideological divide. Ancient grievances resurfaced, fueled by opportunists like Voss who sought to carve out their own empires from the chaos. Yet even in darkness, hope endured. Lieutenant Nakamura's cyber warfare division worked tirelessly to counter Voss's corruption of Earth's military networks. Princess Zara's Eldari scouts discovered hyperspace routes that allowed coalition forces to bypass Centauri blockades. And deep in Imperial space, mysterious allies began targeting Voss's supply lines with surgical precision. "Someone's helping us," Riley reported after investigating a series of devastating strikes against Voss's secret weapons facilities. "Someone with intimate knowledge of Imperial black operations." The question is, why? The answer came from an unexpected quarter. Princess Va, the Empire's failed diplomatic envoy to Earth, requested a secret meeting with Ambassador Sorensen. In a secure facility on neutral ground, the two women who had once sparred across negotiating tables met again. "My father is dying," Va revealed without preamble. "Poison, administered slowly over years. My brother Zoar's work, though it can't be proved. When the Emperor falls, Zoar will ascend the throne. And then..." Her scales rippled with barely contained emotion. "You think the Empire is cruel now? Zoar will make my father look like a benevolent guardian." Sorensen studied the princess carefully. "Why tell us this?" "Because I've seen enough to know the old ways are ending. Humanity's defiance opened my eyes to possibilities I'd never considered. Change is coming to the galaxy, whether we will it or not. The question is, what form will that change take?" The implications were staggering. With Va's help, the coalition might not need to destroy the Empire, they could transform it from within. But could they trust her? And even if they could, would their own allies accept any solution that left the Empire intact? As debates raged through diplomatic channels, the fighting continued. The coalition's guerrilla campaign against Imperial infrastructure began showing results. Supply shortages forced Imperial commanders to concentrate their forces, leaving outlying systems vulnerable to liberation. But Voss's forces remained a deadly wild card, striking at both coalition and Imperial targets with increasingly sophisticated weapons. The galaxy teetered on a knife's edge. Victory seemed tantalizingly close, yet one false move could still bring everything crashing down. In the midst of the chaos, humanity's leaders grappled with questions that would determine the future of a million worlds. Could they trust Princess Va's offer of alliance? Should they press their advantage against the weakening empire, or seek a diplomatic solution? And how could they neutralize Voss without sacrificing millions more innocent lives? The answers would reshape galactic civilization forever. But first, they had to survive the coming storm. The tide turns. The assassination of Emperor Sirius shocked the galaxy. Not because it happened, Princess Va had warned of Prince Zoar's ambitions, but because of how it happened. The Emperor's personal shield generators mysteriously failed during a public ceremony, leaving him vulnerable to a sniper's shot. The killer was never found, but security footage showed the assassin using distinctly human tactics and technology. Zoar seized power immediately, declaring martial law across Imperial space. His first act as Emperor was to order the summary execution of any human found within Imperial territory. His second was to launch a massive offensive against Earth's allies. "He's trying to isolate us," Commander Taylor explained during an emergency coalition council session. "Cut us off from our support base before delivering the killing blow." Ambassador Sorensen studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The timing is too perfect. The assassination, the prepared offensive, Zoros making his move before Princess Va's faction can organize any resistance. My brother has planned this for years, Va confirmed from her secure quarters on Luna. She'd barely escaped Zindi's prime with her life when the assassination occurred. But he's made one critical mistake. Oh. Taylor raised an eyebrow. He believes his own propaganda. That humans are technologically inferior savages who got lucky. He doesn't understand what he's truly facing. The next phase of the war proved her right. As Imperial fleets pushed into coalition space, they encountered something unprecedented: warfare on human terms. Traditional Imperial doctrine relied on overwhelming force, rigid formations, and by-the-book tactics. They weren't prepared for the guerrilla strategies Earth had perfected over millennia of internal conflicts. Lieutenant Nakamura's cyber warfare division struck first, unleashing viruses that turned Imperial targeting systems against their own ships. When Imperial technicians purged their networks, they found their backup systems had been compromised months earlier. The mighty Imperial Armada was reduced to manual targeting and verbal commands, precisely as planned. Now, Taylor ordered, execute Operation Hydra. Across 3 sectors, coalition forces emerged from carefully prepared ambush positions. But instead of engaging in traditional ship-to-ship combat, they employed tactical innovations that left Imperial commanders reeling. Weaponized mining equipment turned asteroid fields into deadly shrapnel clouds. Civilian cargo ships revealed hidden weapon systems, striking from unexpected vectors. Even space itself seemed to fight for the coalition as carefully planned gravitational slingshots gave their smaller ships impossible maneuverability. The Battle of Arcturus became the turning point. Imperial Admiral Vex, frustrated by coalition hit-and-run tactics, committed his entire fleet to a decisive engagement. It was exactly what Earth strategists had planned for. Witness true human warfare, Taylor transmitted on all frequencies as his forces sprung the trap. The coalition fleet didn't just defeat the Imperial Armada, they systematically dismantled it, using tactics that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Ethan Riley, embedded with the coalition forces, documented everything. They expected us to fight like everyone else, he wrote in his combat journal. To follow the same tactical doctrines that have dominated space warfare for millennia. Instead, we fought like humans, adaptable, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice short-term advantages for long-term gains. The Empire's greatest weakness turned out to be its own certainty in its superiority. But victory came at a terrible cost. The Imperial forces, driven to desperation, began targeting civilian populations. Entire worlds burned as Zoar ordered the use of forbidden weapons, planet-cracking bombs and engineered plagues that had been banned for millennia. The coalition's response was swift and terrible. Princess Zara's Eldari fleet, joined by ships from a dozen liberated worlds, launched a desperate assault on Zindi's prime itself. Not to conquer, that would have been impossible, but to deliver a message. You are not untouchable, Ambassador Sorensen's transmission echoed through Imperial communication channels as coalition ships breached the capital's defenses. You are not gods. And if you continue this path of extinction, we will ensure your empire's end comes far sooner than you imagine. To demonstrate their resolve, the coalition fleet destroyed the Imperial shipyards orbiting Zindi's prime, the largest manufacturing complex in known space. The economic damage was catastrophic. More importantly, the psychological impact of such a strike on the Imperial throne world sent shockwaves through the Empire's ruling class. Meanwhile, the situation with Governor Voss reached a critical point. His forces, increasingly desperate as supply lines failed, began targeting civilian habitats with even greater brutality. But his reign of terror came to an unexpected end when his own inner circle turned against him. We found proof, Lieutenant Nakamura reported to the Coalition Council. Voss wasn't just working with Imperial extremists, he was planning to betray them too. He was going to sell out everyone, Imperial and Coalition alike, to an unknown party outside the galaxy. Someone or something that promised him powers beyond current scientific understanding. The revelation transformed the conflict. No longer was it simply about rebellion against imperial rule, something far darker lurked at the edges of known space. But before that threat could be addressed, the coalition had to end the civil war tearing the galaxy apart. Princess Va provided the key. Working with moderate elements in the imperial nobility, she revealed irrefutable evidence of Zoar's crimes, not just the assassination of their father, but decades of corruption and secret deals with hostile powers beyond the galaxy's edge. The Imperial Guard, bound by ancient oaths to protect the Empire itself rather than any individual ruler, moved against Zoar. The fighting was brutal but brief. In the end, the prince who had schemed so long for power died ignominiously, betrayed by his own protectors. In the chaos that followed, Va ascended to the throne, not as an absolute monarch, but as the leader of a reformed imperial council that included representatives from all species. The coalition's victory was complete, but the real work was just beginning. As the galaxy struggled to rebuild from decades of war, disturbing reports began emerging from the outer rim. Strange ships of unknown design. Mysterious disappearances. And whispers of something ancient stirring in the darkness between the stars. Humanity had helped free the galaxy from imperial tyranny. Now they would need to help defend it from something far worse. Beyond the rim. The black ship appeared without warning at the edge of coalition space. 3 kilometers of perfectly smooth hull that absorbed all sensor scans, its mere presence triggered emergency protocols across a dozen worlds. When it broadcast its message, the galaxy's newly forged peace shattered. "Your species fights impressively," the transmission began, its words somehow simultaneously in every known language. "You have proven yourselves worthy of elevation. Submit to integration, and ascend." Commander Taylor, watching from the bridge of the Horatius, felt a chill he hadn't experienced since his first confrontation with the Imperial Court. Analysis. Lieutenant Nakamura's fingers danced across his console. The ship's configuration matches fragments found in Governor Voss's encrypted files. "Sir. I think these are his mysterious benefactors." The Coalition Council convened immediately. Representatives from former imperial worlds brought forward ancient records, stories passed down through generations of something waiting beyond the galactic rim. The precursors, some called them. The Shapers. The ones who had seeded the galaxy with intelligent life, only to disappear millions of years ago. "They've been watching us," Princess Va, now Empress, declared. "Waiting for us to reach a certain level of development. The question is, why now?" Ambassador Sorensen studied the collected data with growing concern. "Look at the timing. They appeared just as we achieved true galactic unity. Almost as if they were waiting for us to solve our internal conflicts," Taylor finished. "But not out of benevolence." Ethan Riley's investigation uncovered the truth. Ancient records, pieced together from a dozen species archives, painted a disturbing picture. The precursors hadn't seeded life out of altruism, they were farmers tending a crop. Every few million years, they returned to harvest civilizations that had reached sufficient technological advancement. Integration isn't an offer, Riley's report concluded. It's consumption. They absorb species into their collective, stealing their uniqueness, their innovations, their very essence. And now they think we're ripe for harvest. The black ship's ultimatum was clear: submit within one planetary rotation, or face extinction. The Coalition's response was equally clear, delivered by Commander Taylor himself. Humanity warned the galaxy once before, when a corrupt empire demanded tribute, he transmitted. Now we warn you, we do not submit. We do not yield. And we are not alone. The precursor vessel's response was devastating. Energy weapons of unimaginable power lashed out, destroying orbital installations around 3 coalition worlds simultaneously. But the galaxy's combined forces had learned from humanity's example: never fight the way your enemy expects. Lieutenant Nakamura's Cyber Warfare Division had been preparing for this moment since discovering Voss's files. As the precursor ship attacked, they launched their counterstrike, not with weapons, but with ideas. Stories. Art. Music. The full spectrum of human creativity and emotion, transmitted directly into the collective's neural network. The effect was catastrophic. The precursor consciousness, used to absorbing ordered, logical species, couldn't process the chaos of human imagination. Their perfect unity fractured as they tried to comprehend concepts like abstract art, jazz improvisation, and interpretive dance. They've never encountered anything like us, Sorensen realized. A species that embraces contradiction, that thrives on diversity instead of unity. We're not just resistant to absorption, we're toxic to their whole system. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia. Coalition forces, led by humanity but incorporating tactical innovations from 100 species, engaged the precursor vessel in ways its creators had never imagined. Elderly psychic attacks complemented human electronic warfare. Xindi phase shifters worked in concert with Earth's quantum disruptors. But the true victory came not from weapons, but from communication. As the precursor collective struggled to process the flood of human culture, individual consciousness began emerging within their gestalt. The artists, dreamers, and revolutionaries they had absorbed over millions of years awakened, fighting for their stolen individuality. The black ship's destruction was spectacular, not from external attack, but from internal revolution. As it broke apart, thousands of smaller vessels emerged, each carrying fragments of newly liberated consciousness. In the aftermath, the galaxy faced a new challenge. The precursors weren't gone, only this harvesting fleet had been defeated. More would come, drawn by the very unity and advancement that had attracted the first. But humanity had given the galaxy something greater than tactical innovation or military strength. They had shown that true power came not from conformity, but from diversity. Not from demanding tribute, but from offering alliance. Not from subjugation, but from cooperation. We stand at a crossroads, Ambassador Sorensen addressed the expanded Coalition Council, now including representatives from liberated precursor consciousness. The galaxy united to end imperial tyranny. Then it united again to resist extinction. Now we must unite once more, not in fear, but in hope. Not for survival, but for transformation. Commander Taylor, watching from his command chair, smiled as ships from 100 species moved in formation around the Horatius. Some bore the proud colors of their homeworlds. Others displayed the scars of imperial occupation or precursor absorption. All flew as equals, as allies, as friends. Humanity warned the galaxy that tribute was for the weak, he mused. Now we've shown them something stronger, the power of defiance, of creativity, of unity born not from fear but from choice. The Empire had demanded tribute and fallen. The precursors had demanded submission and shattered. But humanity's greatest victory wasn't in resistance, it was in inspiration. Across the stars, species that had knelt in fear now stood in pride. Civilizations that had survived through isolation now thrived through cooperation. And in the darkness between the stars, more black ships waited. But they would find a galaxy transformed, not by humanity's strength alone, but by the strength of all species standing together, ready to defy any power that demanded tribute from the free. The end.